All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Making Multifamily Money. So today I'm excited to bring on two guests. I have Christina and Patrick. How are you two doing today?
Hi, Stephen. Great. How are you?
Doing
Thanks for
great.
having us.
Yeah. Very excited about your journey. And, thank you for giving me the opportunity to interview you, to learn from you, and to, kind of share your knowledge with my audience. So to kind of get started, can you kind of tell me about yourselves, like how you got started in real estate?
Yeah, of course. So, real estate has been a joint passion of ours since we met each other way back in 2007. We bought our first house in 2009, and it was a house hack scenario right away. We bought a duplex. And so that allowed us to have a tenant help us pay for the mortgage. And so that was in 2009, and we didn't buy our second property until 2019. So there was like a nice chunk of time in there where we really wanted to buy something, but we just didn't either have the money or things didn't align. So that amount of time it was difficult because we wanted to be real estate investors. You think that you put that hat on and you're just going to go out there and be buying houses all the time. So yeah, it wasn't the case. So first house was 2009, second house was 2019. And that one was a single family that we intended to just fix and flip. And once we started getting into the fixing part, we encountered more problems than we had anticipated. So we turned our model into a buy and hold, and we just turned it into a short-term rental. So yeah, those are the two properties that we own.
Okay.
And then we have two arbitrage places in Austin.
Okay, great. No, I kind of want to dive a little deeper. So, can you kind of tell me about your relationship with real estate? Like, were you taught, from your family? What was kind of your mindset about money growing up? A lot of it, for me, I grew up in a very conservative family. Growing up, for them, it was just save money and put it under a mattress. And eventually you buy a house. And it was very taboo to do rental real estate because debt was bad. So that was the type of setting that I grew up in. I'm kind of curious as to how you guys kind of grew up, like what that looked like.
Yeah, so personally for myself growing up, like my family, we didn't have much money. We never, my family never owned a house or anything, and we kind of moved around a lot, and my parents were looking for jobs and stuff like that. And so I didn't really get that instilled from my parents, but my grandparents on my mother's side, my grandpa owned a bunch of different properties, and he owned some small mobile home parks, and he owned a small hotel at one time, and just different houses and stuff. So I kind of saw as a young child my grandfather doing that, and I always thought that was I don't know, a really neat way to kind of make money, to own properties and rent them out and stuff. So I kind of always had it in the way back of my mind, that it would be a good thing to do. And when Christine and I met, and we were just renting, and we finally started talking, when we got closer and we started talking about it, how just it didn't make sense for us to just be throwing all of our money away, giving it away to somebody else to rent. And so it just felt like a logical thing to do, to buy a house and then buy a duplex. And at the time it wasn't called house hacking. It was just an idea that we came up with. And so we jumped right in and started doing it. And from there we're oh, this is actually a really smart thing to do, and kind of grew from there.
Great. And how about you, Christina?
Personally, yeah, like Patrick, my family really wasn't into real estate. My grandparents had their own business. They had a driving school. So I got to see entrepreneurship on a firsthand level. They had their driving school for my entire life, like over 30 years. So that was really cool to witness. But with regard to real estate, the only thing that was instilled in me was from my grandparents, just owning their own house. And they took pride in that. And that was about it. I don't remember. Oh, actually, yes, I do. In high school, one of my boyfriends in high school, his mother actually was a real estate agent. And I was blown away at the houses that he was selling, like $1 million houses. And I got to see that my boyfriend's family got to live like nicely, like they had nice things. And it just kind of clicked. I'm like, oh, wow, she's a real estate agent and she's making all this money. Real estate must be a good, niche to be in. So that kind of got my gears turning when I was a teenager, like 16, 17. It was interesting.
Okay, great. No, thanks for sharing that. And the reason why I asked that was because a lot of people that go into real estate today, they don't necessarily have like family members who are in real estate. A lot of it was just in passing, right? Like even for me, like my aunt, she does mortgage loans and she's been doing it for 30 years. So I just always heard about real estate, but never really quite understood it. And the extent that I understood it was you just need to own your home, right?
Yeah.
And basically once you own your home, you just pay off your home and you live in that home. And that's basically the American dream, right? That's coined as the American dream. And that's the most we can do because a lot of people, they don't own their own homes, right? Maybe their parents were renting, that was impossible. So the fact that you can do it seemed like crazy, right? Like once you've done that, you've made it. And kind of what I want to highlight is it's kind of interesting how you just kind of see it directly, but no one really even teaches you. Like even like within my family, like, I kind of knew people were a little bit wealthier, like in the family. Or they did real estate, but no one really sat down and explained to me like how to get started, how to do it. And it just kind of took me a lot of self-education. Right. And, you guys got started in 2009 and, back then there's no podcast. There's no, maybe YouTube was just starting.
Bigger Pockets was just starting, I think.
Yeah. Like that time I just started college. So, like smartphone was like just a new thing. I remember I had a Razor, like the Razor.
I know. We talk about that. It's like life before the smartphone. Did it even happen?
Exactly. I had the BlackBerry, the Motorola Razor. Now it's like Samsungs and iPhones, and it's like a supercomputer in your pocket. And growing up, it was just MySpace, and Tom was your first friend. For everyone.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just kind of crazy. And, what also I kind of want to highlight too is that, the fact that you started in 2009 and, that was a great real estate market in retrospect, right? The real estate crashed, 2008, 2009, 2010. And everyone that looks back is like, oh, it's a great time to buy. But it just seemed like it was almost accidental for you guys where you're like, oh, I just want a place to live. You bought this duplex. Okay, well, I live in one side and I rent on the other side before that was even called house hacking. And, for a lot of people don't know, that's how I got started. I got started in house hacking, but when I started investing in 2017, that house hacking model was probably a little more popular. I didn't know what it was, but I lived in the master bedroom. I rented out the 3 other bedrooms in my house for like $1,000 each, and I would rent that out. And for me, I didn't listen to podcasts. That's just what my parents did. Like when I grew up in a 5-bedroom house. They would always rent out one room, the downstairs bedroom, to like someone, and they'd advertise on Craigslist. And since they didn't know how to use the computer, I would do the ads for them. So,
that is crazy.
Yeah. So just fast forward today, I have 90 units and have an apartment complex, mobile home park, all that stuff. But like, I got started house hacking, and that's what I tell everybody. Like, sure, you can see my 90 units, it gets intimidating, but I got started house hacking, and I got a house in 2017. I waited a year and a half, and I got my second house hack, and then I waited another year, got my third house hack, and then after that, I jumped into apartment complexes and scaled exponentially. But it's a very gradual, progression. Like for you guys just need a place to live. It's very natural, right? And by
Yeah.
house hacking, it covered some of your expenses, like maybe close to not all. And then from there, you had a 10-year gap, which, in retrospect, yeah, maybe kicking yourself in the foot a little bit because that was a great market. But, it just, like I said, it wasn't very intentional. Like it was just very accidental. And then all of a sudden, fast forward 10 years later, you buy your single family home, you start off as a fix and flip, and it turned into a burr that you short term rental, right? And
Yeah.
it's probably like
Yep.
accidental as well, right? Like you planned to fix and flip this to get maybe a lump sum of money,
Mm-hmm.
and then it ended up turning into a property that you kept, forced value, and now you rent out on a short term basis. So
And it's great, actually. It's the biggest money maker that we have. So it's
yeah,
oh,
like
thank
it's purely accidental, right? It's like
you.
so it's just kind of why I'm kind of highlighting this and going on tangent a little bit is because like a lot of real estate is just kind of serendipitous, where you just like for me, I just fell into it as well. Like I was like, you know what? I don't want to live with my parents anymore. I'm making money. I down 10%. I live in the house. It doesn't make sense for one guy to live in a 4-bedroom house by himself. I definitely could. It's probably too lonely, but I had the college mentality and just like, you know what? Let me just rent out these rooms. And lo and behold, I was able to rent out like all 3 rooms pretty fast.
That's
And
awesome.
people were paying me $1,000 a month, including utilities, and that covered my mortgage. So I just had to pay, property tax, insurance, and utilities, which was $1,500. That sounds a lot, but I'm in California. It's a high cost of living market. So, it was very accidental. And then I got another job and I just said, okay, well, I don't want to commute 2 hours. So I just bought another house and house hacked that one and rented out the last house. So it was accidental for me too. So
Cool.
that's why I kind of wanted to highlight that. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's deep dive a little bit into that single family home you wanted to fix and flip. So can you kind of share the numbers on that and your thought process on that deal, like how you got it, like what was your initial analysis, what happened?
Sure, I'll let Patrick take over. That was his big project.
Sure. So I was looking for a while and I wanted to find something like a single family in fairly close to where we were like living. And so I found one that was like in need of, some work. And we got that for 72,000. And
It was bank owned, I should say, and there was a contingency, like we couldn't get an inspection like at time of buying.
like they wanted to sell it as soon as possible. And so they wanted people to like kind of like forego all the like processes, like the inspection and stuff. And so I kind of like looked it over pretty well, and I was like, it seemed like there was like a decent amount of work that needed to be done, but that was like a really good deal. And like I was just kind of like chomping at the bit really to like make something happen in this amount of time that like I was like trying to get it done. And so we bought it, and then like as I was fixing it, I uncovered like all this extra just like dry rot, and it had some termite damage and stuff like that. So I like just went to work on like fixing the whole thing basically, mostly by myself.
Wow.
And I had to jack up the house and like replace the like the mud sill that goes all the way across that the house sits on top of the foundation. And so like I tore all that out, and because it wasn't pressure treated what they had in there, and it was like these like 1950s type homes that they had just like built really fast. And so it just like wasn't the greatest craftsmanship, I realized as I was getting into it. But I had some time off that I was able to do this work myself. And so like we just kind of came up with a plan, and we modified it and made some like nice extra like things, like just added nice structural things and just like really kind of upgraded it. and put new windows in, and we just did like a bunch of stuff. And so when we decided that, I don't know when we decided we wanted to hold it instead of
just the numbers didn't work anymore for the fix and flip. So we bought it for 70 or 72, and we ended up putting like, I want to say like 30,000 in like repairs, and it didn't make sense. We wouldn't have been able to sell it for
money. So at the time where the market was, like, it hadn't really appreciated at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then so was it I'm trying to think exactly how it unfolded.
Like, what was the catalyst that made it the decision?
Yeah, like the timing, how.
I guess what did you expect the ARV to be? So you bought for around 70, you put in 30, so you're all in for 100. Like, what did you anticipate the ARV?
Yeah.
What was that guesstimation?
What was the question? What did we expect it to be?
Yeah. You bought it for
Right.
70,000, putting in 30.
We thought we were just gonna put like lipstick on it, like literally paint it and fix the floors. But once we had to get into the foundational issues that we had, it just started adding up. So our margin for making any profit really, really got small. So once we started getting closer to that 100,000 mark with the repairs, we're like, okay, this isn't making sense anymore.
Got it. Okay, and how'd you guys finance it? What did you do? Cash? Did you do like a hard money loan? Was it seller?
We actually bought cash.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I kind of want to like deep dive a little bit more. So kind of my thoughts is, yeah, with bank-owned properties, it's just very difficult. Unfortunately, they usually will sell at a discount. So fortunately, that's great, right? You can usually get instant equity day one, but just the fact that you cannot have an inspection period, that's what makes me very wary of buying bank-owned homes or even doing auctions when they auction off properties. It's just like, like you can look at it, do a quick eyeball test. Even the contractor, you can get a licensed contractor to take a look, but you really don't know until you start ripping out the walls, as Patrick experienced, right? Once you start ripping it out, you uncover a bunch of hidden expenses. It's going to cost money. It's going to cost time. And I will say, fortunately, Patrick was self-renovating it. So you saved on labor, right? Because you're kind of doing it yourself. But imagine if you paid a contractor and, typically the labor is double the materials.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're spending 10,000 on materials, the labor is going to be 20,000. And you quickly saw that, wow, we thought we were going to do lipstick on a pig. So what's that? New floor paint, like $5,000 and you're good. Right.
Yeah.
But once you start ripping out the drywalls, that's when all the issues happened. And, what I kind of teach in my course is, whenever you're quoted by the contractor, you want to increase the cost by at least 25% and the time horizon by 25%. And that's a minimum.
Yeah, absolutely. We've learned that.
I tell people, like, you better have the reserves for that because, like, I'll give an example. On my 20-unit apartment complex, I was literally quoted like, oh, it's going to take me about 4 months to renovate these units. And I just said, well, can you do it in 6? I'll be happy. And they're like, sure. Well, long and behold, fast forward 12 months later till today, my hard money loan's being called due in about a month. We're just about finishing the last unit. So, like you always, and when you have a hard money loan, you're paying interest only, right? High interest rates and that's your holding costs. But because I bought it right with equity day one, I bought it with $50,000 equity day one and have the ability to double the value of the apartment complex with my renovations and raising rents. I feel okay with that huge margin.
Right.
Yeah.
But for you guys, I mean, I guess you didn't have a hard money loan because you just paid in cash, right? So you're not under that gun, under that pressure of being called due.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then number two is that the fact that Patrick was renovating it, it's under your control, right? You can renovate as fast as up to you, versus I have general contractors where, you know, they say, hey, I'm ready to start, and they don't start until 6 months later.
Oh gosh.
And, you know, if you have a hard money loan, that can make or break your deal. If you have a long-term loan, okay, you can take a hit, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, like no matter what you do, you're going to take some hits along the way. And that's what I really emphasize in my course is like, it's not all rainbows and sunshine when you do real estate. Like, you know, if you asked me 3 years ago, like, hey, you're going to own 90 units of real estate, I'm like, I'm retired on a yacht. That's what I would tell people.
Yeah.
I'm retired on a yacht, right? But the reality is I'm still working my W-2. I'm still renovating and stabilizing my apartment complex, and, you know, it's taking a lot longer than I thought, right? And it's more stressful than I thought, right? so it's just kind of, you know, the more realistic end, and you guys are experiencing too. And this is literally your second property, right? At this point, you can get highly discouraged and give up.
Yeah.
But the fact that you pivoted and said, you know what, let's just keep this. And I'm a big proponent of buy and hold, I'll be honest, because it's so much work. It's so much work to renovate a property, to find a good deal, and to make it, you know, once it's renovated, you fix all the issues.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why get rid of it now? Like,
and I think we were kind of like, let's make this money back that we just spent. You know what I mean? Like, let's get the stack.
Yeah.
And if it's, that's fine, you know?
Yeah, you guys did all the hard work, right? Like, you fixed this property up. There's not going to be much maintenance, much CapEx for the next couple of years. And, you know, now you're using Airbnb, so you pivoted, right, to get more cash flow.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's just like a golden goose. Like, why would you kill the golden goose? Like that you have?
Keep collecting gold.
Yeah. It's like, you know, money. So that's why it's just really impressive. Like, while, you know, in real estate, you will stumble and fall, but if you can just hold out for the long term and be flexible and pivot, like, you will be successful long term, right?
Absolutely.
Like, you could have just accepted and be like, you know what, I fixed this, I sold it, I broke even, and, you know, Patrick wasted all his time, you know. But instead you're like, okay, well, yeah, let's pivot to the short-term model, so short-term rental. So let's dive into that. So what made you pivot to the short-term rental model, and how are you guys currently managing it today?
Well, we actually started in the short-term rental space by renting out our apartment when we would go travel. So this was back in 2018, before we bought our second house. We would just rent out our side of the duplex and go travel for a couple months and rent out our place to help us, you know, kind of pay for our travels. And that kind of put the bug in our ear. We were like, I personally loved it. I loved the experience of interacting with guests and sharing our home and all of the things in that realm, hospitality. So once we realized that the fix and flip method wasn't going to work for our 2019 property, it was kind of easy to, for our brains to figure out the STR aspect of that property. It was kind of a no-brainer, and it was really easy to just play, get it set up, and all of the systems we already had in place, and it kind of just fit perfectly, honestly.
Wow. Okay. So, kind of one thing I want to highlight, which I think it's extremely genius and smart of both of you, is the fact that you kind of tested the model on your own house. And you're right. You essentially did a little pilot study on your own house with Airbnb before fully committing to it. And that's something that I'm emphasizing now, is like, how can I minimize my risk and test something to see if I really like it? Because you might do it and hate it, right? Like, you might have Airbnb'd your house, they might have trashed your house, and you would have hated the experience and never do short-term rentals again. But on the flip side, you actually tried it and said, you know what? I actually don't mind doing this. And your guys' intent was, hey, like, I get a free house sitter and they're subsidizing my vacation and my travel.
Yeah,
right?
Pretty good.
So it's like a 2-in-1. And also, you naturally, after doing it, like, build systems and processes. Like, okay, well, wait, maybe we have to lock up our personal stuff that we have here. We have to create, like, you know, here's a booklet for the Wi-Fi, you know, just stuff that you would need. So it's a very natural, like, I'd say accidental almost, again, where you just wanted to subsidize your travels, and you tested out Airbnb. And I remember back in 2018, that's when it was really popular for like traveling. Like I used to use it,
Mm-hmm.
to travel overseas, and it was cheaper. So once again, really smart. So you basically tried it out, had experience of it. When you did a fix and flip that didn't go the way you wanted, you quickly pivot and say, "Hey, we've done this before, and let's just dump it into this house that we thought we were going to sell."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's really impressive, right? CC, once again, it's just that, if you notice the theme here, it's just the flexibility and just kind of rolling with the punches, if you will. Like you just kind of dealt a hand, and
Yeah. I
the
think
best of your hand.
entrepreneurship is just being light on your feet, being able to pivot, being able to see opportunities and notice when something isn't working right. And it's kind of just a dance. It's really fun.
Yeah, like imagine if you bought a short-term rental and then you didn't test it before and you end up hating it, because I know it's a little bit more work, right, compared to a long-term rental.
It's a lot more.
It's a lot more work, right? It's a hospitality business, right? Like if my light bulb is out, they might call you, right?
Yep.
So it's you dip your toes in before diving in head first. And I think an issue with investors and entrepreneurs, myself included, is I dive in head first, or we dive in head first, right? Without the helmet. So it's really smart in what you did. And that's why I really want to highlight that. So yeah, can you kind of paint a picture of, I guess, how you, advertise your short-term rental, like what type of systems and processes that you create over time, and I guess how it's doing today in terms of cash flow and occupancy?
Sure. Let's see. So we mainly receive most of our bookings. I would say 80 to 85% of our bookings are through Airbnb, and we also sit on VRBO. And how it's going? It's going really well. We have our places up in Buffalo still, and then here in Austin, we're actually trying a different model of arbitraging. So that's basically subleasing apartments, and that's been a wild experience, learning curve, and it has helped us on the cash end of things because we didn't have to buy a property up front here. We were just able to, rent a space, fill it, list it. And that has helped like with our, I guess, cash on hand.
Mm-hmm.
We're eventually going to buy a property here in Austin, which this is helping us kind of get those reserves. I don't know if I answered your question properly though.
Yeah. Let's dive into that a little more. So I guess what appealed to you to the rental arbitrage model? I know it's very popular now. There's a lot of courses populating on it. For me, full disclaimer, I'm not as big of a fan of the short-term rental model. But I know like people who've killed it, short-term rentals in terms of cash flow, like they're probably laughing at me right now as I'm stabilizing my apartment and they already hit, their cash flow goal. But I guess what made you interested into the rental arbitrage model, and I guess what's kind of the typical profit look like for that?
Wow.
So I think what got us like interested in it was like, I don't know, probably like watching videos and stuff on YouTube, just of different like people that were doing it. And we just kind of like saw an opportunity how like we found ourselves in Austin because we were like kind of traveling around looking for a new place to call home. And we were like in our RV camper, and then like the pandemic hit, and so we went through that whole thing like basically while we were on the road. And then we were looking for a place to call home, and we had passed through Austin several times, and we just really liked the vibe and everything here. So we decided to kind of like stay here and kind of see what we could make happen. And that was kind of like a next logical like progression for us because we weren't 100% ready to like buy property. So we were going to just kind of like feel out the market and like, see if we can test the whole arbitrage thing and like make it work.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where we are today. So we've been in Austin since the end of 2020.
Got it. Got it. See, so once again, the theme is you're dipping your toes in before you're diving in head first, which
Yeah, I guess.
is very smart and very strategic. And so in terms of the rental arbitrage, are they kind of more unique experiences, or is it kind of more of like your traditional like apartment unit or single family home? Like, what does it look like? Like,
That's a
how do you?
good question.
Yeah.
So we were looking for our spaces. We were really specific. Like I wanted them to have a view of the skyline of the city, because we wanted to set ourselves apart. There's so many rentals here. So there's not many opportunities to set yourself apart when you're an apartment, you know? So that was one of our key things to find was our apartments need to have a beautiful view of the skyline. So that's what we were aiming for, and we found them. And in regards to experience, we strongly stand by the experience that we give our guests. It's not just your average Airbnb rental. When you stay with us, it's a full experience. Like you feel like you're home. Everything is there for you that you could imagine, and then some. We really like to make our places a place where we can plug ourselves in if we needed to, like just stay there and everything is there that we would ever want or need. So we provide that space exactly for the guests. We have yoga mats and guitars and ukuleles, and the fridge is nice and stocked with cold beverages and all sorts of coffee and tea. It's really really special.
Okay, great. Yeah. So why I asked that was because you kind of beat me to the punch. Is with rental arbitrage, it's creating a lot more competition with short-term rentals. So you really have to have unique stays and really stand out. Like those are the ones
Yeah.
that are doing well right now, versus like if you were to just rent out a regular apartment complex, it's nothing real special, right? It's just maybe you're just kind of visiting, and you'd prefer that over a hotel. So I'm glad you mentioned that you focused on a nice view, nice skyline of Austin. So it's probably close to a lot of bars and places to go to and go out if you're visiting, but also emphasize that it just at home where like you would, if it was vacant, you could just stay there yourselves too. And,
Yes.
whatever you would need, they would have there. So I think that's very smart and what people need to kind of focus on with that. So I guess my next question I have is, how do you guys manage that? Do you outsource that, or is it something that you guys take care of? What is management?
That's a good question. So our property is up in Buffalo. We have a team up there. We have a cleaner, and we have somebody to do the laundry. And then our long-term tenant, he helps us keep the properties, maintained with regard to the lawn and if anything inside needs a little fixing. So we have a wonderful team up there that I manage from here in Austin. And then the two places that we have here in Austin, we manage them ourselves. Right now, we clean and do all the things. So yeah, it's 100% us.
Wow. Okay. So that's very impressive. So, not only did Patrick renovate his own house, you're also now self-managing and doing the cleaning of the, rental arbitrages right now. So,
Yeah.
okay, great, great. So, I think once again, I think it's very smart that because with rental arbitrage, your only cost in is, the security deposit, I'm assuming, as well as the rent and the cost of the furniture and to furnish the whole unit. Can you kind of break down those numbers? Like how much did it kind of cost you initially out of pocket to get this up and running? And how long did it take to get it up and running?
Okay, great question. Let me just dust off some files in my brain here. I would say it took us maybe about a month to get each, or less than a month, maybe like 3 weeks.
I think a month is
About a
about
month.
accurate.
Yeah, about a
Um,
month to get each one like ready and set, and not like all the pictures, everything set up and ordered. About a month each, and then I would say around 8 to 10,000
yeah.
we spent to set up each. And just they're both 2 bed, 2 bath, and they have a full kitchen. So about $8 to $10,000 to set up each.
And we kind of got like,
You
know,
know,
a
leather couches and really nice things.
Yeah, a lot of like I don't know, the things that you see, you know, people are scaling and stuff, and they're really just like buying cookie cutter stuff, buying, you know, cheap stuff and setting them up super fast and doing like 10 of them in 2 weeks or something like that. But like, we really wanted to like
be intentional,
make it special, and yeah, be intentional, and like kind of like really been working on like building a brand around the whole thing that, you know, represents who we are and what we believe in, and kind of just like really focusing on building that, you know what I mean, before scaling like crazy fast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's what I've heard. It's around maybe, you know, $10,000 to $15,000, about $5,000 per bedroom. Is kind of what I heard. So that's great to hear. And I guess my next question is how, oh, the question just lost my mind. I just had the tip of my tongue. Oh, wow. We're really blanked out there. Yeah, I guess my question is, I guess what was kind of your why behind, you know, doing this? Like, was your goal financial freedom? Was it to replace a W-2 job? Was it just to give you flexibility? Like, what was your why, I guess, behind, you know, going to this Airbnb rental arbitrage model and real estate in general?
I would say our first and foremost was financial, you know, freedom. That's why we got into real estate way, way, way back then. And why we got into short-term rentals is we're just following our passion, and we really saw an opening in the market for the need for spaces that were more intentional, were more nurturing, were more than what was on the market.
More personal.
Yeah. There was a space for mindful travel. Like, people need spaces that they can feel comfortable and stuff in, yeah. So we really, that's really what drew us to continue down this line, was this passion that we have, you know, talking to guests and making them feel loved, and creating these spaces, and how it all ties into real estate. It's like so beautiful. Like, wow.
Okay. And I reminded my question now. Thanks for prompting me.
Yeah.
It just seems like you guys both actually and genuinely enjoy the experience of managing like a short-term rental, right? Like, you like interacting with the guests. You like creating a unique experience that's very genuine, that's very homely. And why I want to highlight that is because not every real estate investor has that mindset, right? Like, for me, I don't think would enjoy that. But if you do, you know, short-term rental is a great model to go towards. That's why I said real estate. There's no one real estate for everybody. It varies per person depending on what you like and what you're best at. So you guys are leaning into your natural, I guess, abilities and personality type, and leveraging that to do short-term rentals. So it's a very natural fit, you know, what you guys like to do and what you know, how you make money with short-term rentals. If you don't have that mentality, you will probably hate short-term rental, right? And right, you'll hate it. Like, you'll hate, like, you know, cleaning up after, you know, after a guest leaves. You know, there's a lot of cleaning, maybe some maintenance and touch up that you have to do afterwards. You have to restock supplies. You know, there's issues, they're going to contact you. So you have to really like that process and really enjoy it in order to make Airbnb something that you would do and not hate yourself doing. So
exactly. Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to really highlight that. And
Thanks.
Another thing too is, I guess in terms of your time commitment on a weekly basis, like how much, or on a monthly basis, how much time do you guys average managing these
Oh boy.
properties?
It's I just dedicate my life to this.
Okay.
right now, I don't know. That's a
Yeah,
hard one.
you should track it one time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I work all the time, but it's not like, it's hard to explain.
It's like she's always on. She's not always working, but she's always available, like to answer questions, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean. And it might just be like one or two contacts with a guest throughout the day, but then some days there might be like 20 times that she's, been messaging 4 different guests, and then possibly future guests,
Yeah.
and sometimes
Coordinating.
she's definitely working a lot. So we see people, on the different forums and on YouTube that say like, I spent only 1 or 2 hours like a week on my whole Airbnb empire, and we're just like, I don't see how that's even possible.
Yeah, because there's so many facets, like dynamic pricing and setting up, like scheduling your cleaners and talking to the guests, and there's just so many facets.
Just even talking to your team and talking to your guests right there. That's like, it adds up, you know what I mean?
But I enjoy it so much, so I don't really notice. But yeah, it's probably a good chunk of time.
No, I'm glad you guys said that, to give a more realistic picture of what it looks like to own a short-term rental. So, for me, I work a full-time W-2, so I wouldn't be able to be as attentive as both of you guys, right?
Yeah, Patrick works a full-time W-2.
Yeah, I work a full-time W-2, and then Christina takes care of that part of it, yeah.
So you're like a team essentially, but if it was Patrick by himself, it'd almost be impossible for Patrick to manage it while working full-time W-2 and attending to these guests, right? It would be a burn. Yeah, Patrick would burn out real fast. So
he burns out already in his face. Imagine.
Yeah. So the fact that you're a team and that essentially Christina is dedicated to this and available. Like, maybe some days, maybe it's 1 or 2 text messages, but just the fact that you have to be available, the fact that it's on the back of your mind, even though it could be going smoothly, and that's just with real estate in general. Even me, I have long-term rentals for apartments, and even though I touch base with my property manager maybe like once a week for maybe an hour total per property manager, but it's still on the back of your mind, and you still have to kind of think about it. And when they reach out to you, you typically have to respond timely, right? Whether it's my property manager needing me to authorize something, whether it's a guest saying, hey, whatever, the thermostat doesn't work and it's cold, right? So it's just being available, but that's, what it takes, right? Like right now, you're okay managing this, but maybe down the road, Christina might say, hey, I want to be more free. And you might have to like outsource some of the management, which is going to cut into your profits, unfortunately. But also it might dilute the experience, right? Because, they may not be as good as you when you hire someone else, right? No matter what they say, the property manager, unfortunately, is not going to be as good as you because they're not going to care as much as the owner.
True.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I always say that there's a give and take, right? If you're willing to put in the time, you can make more money, right? But you're putting in your time. But if you want more passive, like what you're hearing people say, like, okay, I'm putting 1 to 4 hours a week, which is impossible, but maybe their profit is not as good, or maybe there's no profit, right?
Maybe.
because I know how it works. The property manager, they get 25% cut at least, regardless if you make money or not.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Whatever the gross rent is, they take their 25 to 30%. Whatever is left over for the owners, hopefully it's profitable. But if it's not, they still got their money, right? That's what I'm experiencing. With my property management, it's like if they don't perform, why do they care? They still collect their 7-8% fee. And it's just like, if I'm losing money, it doesn't affect them. So it's just kind of unfortunate dark side of real estate. Something that people have to go with. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I guess my next kind of follow-up question to that is, I guess, what is your goal next? Like, do you guys want to scale? Are you kind of happy where you're at? Like, what is kind of
yeah, so we definitely would like to get some more units here in Austin. But our long-term vision is to actually build or find a tiny home community that we can build onto and just create this community that also has maybe a yoga meditation space on there that we could like have community events and
like do
healing retreats.
do types of retreats, but then also have tiny homes that we could do short-term rentals on, and just like a nice chunk of land.
Yeah, very zen.
Yeah.
That's the down the road dream.
Wow. Okay. No, thanks for sharing that. And so is it kind of like you buy your own land and you develop the infrastructure, whether it's septic, water, and from there you build the infrastructure, like the roads and, short-term. Okay. So kind of got it. I asked because I think one of my guests that I interviewed, she's kind of doing the same thing in Wisconsin. It's actually, Kelly, where she's kind of creating an experience on 80 acres of land that she accidentally purchased. So, but what I like about what you guys are doing, it's kind of the same thing, right? You're trying to create this land. Fortunately with land, you're going to be paying cash or seller financing it if it's paid off. And then any infrastructure above that, once again, it's either, hard money loan typically or bridge loan, or you're seller financing, or you're just fronting the cost yourself. Right. And it's, I own mobile home parks, and I know like setting up a new lot in a mobile home park is like around $30,000, right? That you get to have concrete there, all utility hookups. It's a pretty nice chunk of change, right? It's not cheap. Like it's not $10,000 to set up like an Airbnb rental unit. But I really like what you guys are doing is, if you can kind of see your journey, you're kind of stacking, right? So the fact that you're doing the rental arbitrage to build up cash flow and save that cash flow to build up, basically to buy this little tiny home community or village.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a stacking process. And I want to highlight that to my audience, is that it's not, you just don't go straight from zero to this village, this tiny home village. You have to slowly stack your way. If you see their story, it's house hacking first, right? They did a kind of a fix and flip that turned into a long-term hold, short-term rental. After that, it pivoted to, rental arbitrage, which you start off with 2, and then you're going to scale maybe to 4.
Yeah.
Once those are stabilized and they're cash flowing, you organically save those up, and now you try to find a piece of land.
Yeah.
And basically from there, you just build upon it, because it's probably going to take, I'd say, 2 to 3 years to get that, tiny home village up and running. Assuming it goes smoothly. That's assuming you go smoothly. But what's nice about that, and if you get creative with it, it can even be like before infrastructure set up, it can almost be like maybe an RV parking spot, right? Where you can
or a bunch of yurts, or
you can get a bunch of yurts. So even before I start making money with the tiny homes, you can kind of transition it with like yurts, which is not that hard to set up. People can park their thing there. You can renovate a school bus, put it there, make it a living experience.
That's on the list.
Oh, yep, it's on the list.
I worked for like a company that we make like RV like vans, like the van life vans that you see on Instagram. And so like I work for a company that's been around since the 60s, like building these vans. And so like I'm learning all the ins and outs.
So to even stack onto that, you're in a W-2 that actually correlates with what you want to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like imagine partnering with that company, say, hey, how about you put your vans here on our property, and then we can split the profits. I just made that up. I don't even know if it's an ideal. And then, then coming from California, being near wine country, maybe you can create a wine tasting experience and basically, serve wine, do charcuterie boards, and just make it like a more fancy bougie experience to attract the higher income people. who want to escape, right? Or even be a spot for companies to retreat at, right? You know, there's a lot of tech companies that's migrating to Austin, Texas, so maybe they want to escape for a little bit.
Yep.
So this is what I love about real estate is that you can be ultimately creative. And I just love the fact that your W-2 actually kind of ties into what you want to do. So it translates.
That's awesome.
Like for me, I'm a pharmacist, right? So unless I'm growing drugs in one of my units, it doesn't really translate unless it's Breaking Bad, right? But no, I'm joking. I mean, there's a lot that does translate over. But, you know, I just love that, you know, just you can do almost whatever you want, and you know it's going to cost money, what you build your reserves for, and you're stacking your skill sets, right? Because at this point, with your 2 rental arbitrages, it's almost like advertise. You can put advertisements of your tiny home village in that unit, almost.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, if you enjoyed this, like, you know, we have this other experience. So it's really building your brand, building your reputation, and you know, I would advise like just document and create content out of it. Like, I'm not sure if you're doing YouTube or anything like that, but you know, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just documenting your process, and documenting everything, like, and sharing it. And you know, even if you buy your land, just that whole process as well. Like just documenting how we got this land, like how we negotiated the land, what we plan on doing. Hey, we're talking to the city. This is what it takes to install city water. This is what it takes to do septic. You know, this is what it takes to build a road. Like, you know, I just think sharing that journey would be so valuable, and it's a little more trendy, I guess, right now, as you alluded to with the van life, or even like reviewing the vans that you currently work for. You know, maybe your boss might love it, right? Like, hey, let me do some reviews of these vans and just post it on my channel. It's like free advertising. So no, thanks for sharing that. And I guess my next question here, you know, I know it's getting close on time. I want to be cognizant of your time. I guess what's kind of your cash flow goal before I guess you pivot to this tiny village model? Like, do you kind of have it that laid out, or is it kind of more just free flowing?
To be honest, it's very free flowing right now.
I don't think we've like set a specific goal for when we move forward with that actual project. That would actually probably be a really good idea for us to do. Maybe it'll give us a more of a direct roadmap to reach that. But like, I guess we're just kind of focusing on our next move is just kind of like, we're gonna just purchase like a home before doing that, like
probably another house
hack before doing that, and then also get several more arbitrages. So what that number looks like, we haven't really spoken into an existence yet. We probably should.
No, thanks for sharing that. And what I wanted to highlight was, you know, a trap that a lot of real estate investors fall into, which I fell into, was they're so fixated on a unit number count as well as a cash flow number. Like for me personally, I was fixated by 35 years old. I wanted 20K a month in net cash flow. And, you know, even despite, you know, scaling to 90 units, I just found myself being so like unhappy with myself because I'm like, oh, I'm not quite there yet. I felt like I was living in the future. Right? Wasn't being present. So, you know, I wanted to highlight that, you know, what you're doing is not necessarily bad. It's just, you know, I would say you guys are living in the present, right? Like, hey, what am I doing today? Right. And right now we're focusing on our rental arbitrages. And once that does well, it's going to naturally progress to another house hack. Once that's done, it's going to progress to scaling the rental arbitrage. And at that point, you know, you can reevaluate if you want to, you know, create that tiny village. And like I said, a lot of people get fixated. And even me, I was so fixated on scaling. I was so fixated on 100 units. I bought 80 units in 8 months, you know, for contracts without partners. And they're all huge value add deals. Right.
Wow.
But
go you.
Yes. Wow. I mean, it sounds impressive to say, but the reality, and I'm very honest, right? Oh my God, you don't realize what you get into until a year later, right? Like fast forward a year later, I'm like, oh my God, like you're writing a lot of checks for renovations, right? I renovated 40 units in 1 year, which is like a high level flipper, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
went from never renovating a unit to renovating 40 units in 1 year. And if I make a mistake, times that mistake by 40,
Yeah.
right? Like what you guys went through of your single family home. If I made a mistake, you times it by 40. So it's just so much more pressure. And I didn't dip my toes in, I dived in head first.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
And on top of that, like to this day, like I had to pump the brakes. Like I'm doing the reverse. Like people say scale, scale, scale. I'm saying stop, stop, stop. Like I'm gonna pause, and had to really reevaluate what made sense for me. And it ended up me saying, you know what, I need to probably sell my mobile home park and unload it. It's currently in escrow right now to be sold. I'll make a little bit of profit for it, but for me, it was just about the mental peace of mind. Just because, like, I was just, when you're trying to bake 3 cakes, you lose
Too
track of
much.
it, and they all might burn. So I'd rather have, 2 good cakes versus 3 burnt cakes.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
So like I said, while what I did was impressive, I tell everyone, like, don't do what I did. I mean, maybe if I was full time into real estate and I had a team, you can make that, right? Even then, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But the fact that I had a W-2, and doing all that, it was just so crazy. Like, I realized with mobile home park, like, I need to be this full time, and I feel like I need to live at that park. That's how much it is, right? And you guys
learned so much, though.
Yeah, you learn so much, and that might happen to you guys when you start your tiny village. You might be living there and managing it on a day-to-day basis, coordinating contractors, doing all that, because that's the level of work you need. But once it's set up, it can make you so much money, right? Like my mobile home park, like, I bought it for $1 million. 30 out of 200 lots were filled, but if I filled up all 200 lots, I think it's worth 12 million plus.
Amazing.
Which is life-changing money, but I probably need to live there full time for at least 3 to 5 years to make it work. Right.
Probably.
But if you can do that, great. But for me, I was like, I cannot. I'm working a full-time job, and I don't want to do that. Right. That's not for me. So that's when I realized that, you know what, I need to, like, sell this. Fortunately, I got a good offer that hopefully will close. But that's when I said, you know what, I need to just double down on apartment complexes. It's a lot easier for me. It fits my lifestyle a little better. And it translates better while I have a full-time W-2, right? It's a little more passive. It's just copy and paste, right? You renovate 1 unit, copy and paste the other 40 units. You're not reinventing the wheel. So it's a lot more scalable for someone, who's not full-time in real estate and still working a full-time W-2. So that model works for me. But I only realized it by trying a whole bunch of things.
Hey, right? That's how we got to figure things out. It's just trying a whole bunch of things and see what sticks. Exactly. So it's really cool to hear your story.
Yeah, and that's why I was really impressed by how you guys just dip your toes into it a little bit. Because I wish I did that. I wish I just dipped my toes a little bit to get a little bit of exposure, and I quickly would have known if I liked it or not, or if it would fit my current real estate portfolio. But I was so focused on scale that I was just blind to everything, and I was just making offers and closing on deals because you're busy, right? It's not easy to close on deals, and when you first take over a property, it's a lot of work, initial work.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, so yeah, very impressive what you guys have done, and I respect it. Like,
likewise,
you're going at a perfect pace, I'd say. So don't feel bad at all.
Thank you.
And I get great. So the last question I ask all my guests is, I guess, what does a real estate investor need to be successful? Like, what trait do you think they need to be successful in real estate?
I would say you have to be nimble. You have to be able to think outside of the box, be creative, and see things creatively. Because everybody has a different perspective. So the way you might see something is different than the way somebody else sees something. So yeah, being nimble and being creative, I think, are qualities that are needed be in real estate? What do you think?
I'd like to add, like to just have like the fortitude to not give up, because like you're gonna make mistakes and you can't let it like get you down and stop you, because if you just stop after your first mistake, I mean,
you'll never get anywhere.
we'd never be anywhere. Yeah, like nobody probably would, right? If you can't push through it and like and keep at it and like figure out what you've done wrong and then fix it for the next time, then you got to have that tenacity, I guess.
Yeah, I
No,
like that one, Patrick.
No, thanks for sharing that. I completely agree with both of those. Real estate's more of an art than a science. I do say. Obviously with real estate, there's a lot of systems and processes that you can create and automate, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Like, real estate hasn't really changed over the last century for the most part. And just being able to be creative, because you just said, hey, like instead of our fix and flip failed, you just could have sold it, lost some money or wasted some time and just gave up and never probably do real estate again because you thought it was a waste of time and money. And effort. But instead you said, you know what? Hey, let's pivot, go to short-term rental. And because of that, now you're able to, number one, get some money back and get paid for that time and effort and energy you put in. So that's very smart. But on top of that, having that tenacity of, getting knocked down, but getting back up. So the analogy I love to use is, if you fell from a 30-foot cliff one time, you cannot get back up.
Ooh.
But if you fall from 1 feet 30 times, you can get back up every time.
Yeah, you can. Wow, so, I love that.
Yeah, so that's what I say that analogy. That's what I think you guys did. Your fall at worst was 1 foot. So even if you messed up, you can still get back up.
Yeah, you're right.
Versus if you went all in on a deal and, if you fell from it and it would have wiped you out, you never would have wanted in real estate again. You said, you know what, this is not for us. Let's do something else.
Yeah.
But the fact that you kept on going and you minimized your downside, I think it's kind of your guys' secret genius. If you may not be aware of it, but I think that's what the secret genius is that I see in you two. And
thanks.
Another thing that I kind of want to add on too is, in order to have that tenacity to keep on going, is you have to have good reserves. And that's what I always tell like all real estate investors is always have good reserves, because if you can solve the issue of money, then in the long term, when you look back in 10 years, it's not going to really matter. But the key is having that money to survive and keep on going. Yeah. Right. So imagine if you didn't have, like, if you only allocated 10,000 for lipstick on a pig renovations, but you ended up probably going triple, but you had those reserves to do it. So you finish it all the way. Right. But imagine if you didn't have the money. Imagine if you did half the job. At that point, you're stuck. You have no choice but to sell it to somebody. And when you sell it, you're going to sell it to a wholesaler or a flipper, and they're going to gouge you on prices because they need to make a profit too.
Yeah.
So the fact that you had that reserve without probably even knowing it saved you on that deal.
Yes, thanks for pointing that out, because you're so right about that. And especially like with the timing of COVID and everything, like having those reserves really gave us peace of mind that we knew we were going to make it through.
Yeah, and you guys are doing the same again, right? With the rental arbitrage, you're building a reserve. You're going to down payment on a house that you're going to house hack. And then once the house is done, you probably would have wiped your reserves, and then you rebuild up your reserves again. So it's very, you guys didn't really mention it, but that's what you essentially did, was you had that safety net, you had that cushion, so you only had that 1 foot fall. It wasn't a 30-foot fall.
Yeah.
Now, had you spent all your money, that might have been a 30-foot fall. And we may not be talking right now, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so I just wanted to really highlight that in what you guys did without even realizing it.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah. So, Patrick, Christina, thank you for hopping on today. I got a lot of value, from the conversation. I'm sure the audience, will get a lot of value from this conversation. For those who want to get a hold of you, how can they reach out to you guys?
They can find us on social media at Stayzenretreats. We're on all social media, so anywhere you could find us, and Christina and Patrick.
Got it. And I'll put the links down below as well. So thank you everyone for hopping on today, and I hope to see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Thanks.
Steven.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.